It is 7 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Item 3 is approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Aaron made the motion and Bob seconded it. Any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Want to read the orders?
The One School Board strives to provide an environment where students can be happy, healthy, and awesome in their educational pursuits. We believe that each student can graduate ready for college and/or a career. To do so, we will provide a safe, nurturing, and engaging learning environment that meets individual wellness, social, and emotional needs.
All right, thank you. Item number 5 is any district resident who'd like to speak to any item on the agenda. All right. Item 6 is presentations. Boyd Jones.
Yeah, thanks guys. I haven't been here in person for a while, so Mark Feaster with Boyd Jones. I brought Ethan Fitzler with me tonight. Ethan has been living here in Allwine since the project started, so it's kind of the straw that stirs the drink around there. Our superintendent, Jeff, couldn't be here tonight because he checked off a bucket list item and went to Daytona yesterday, so he's traveling back tomorrow. So just wanted to share some pictures with you of the project. So we are still very much a construction site down there, but it is starting to look like something. So Josh, if you want to just start forwarding. So this was on the left, just the concept picture of the building, so you can kind of see the entrance coming together there on the right. You can go to the next one there.
You need to make a beeping noise.
I beep and then it moves.
Yeah.
Can I clap?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Who was the kid that got to sit in the back of the class and then push the slide deck forward for the teacher? You guys remember that?
Yep, I got you.
I don't think we have that.
Okay, you
I don't remember that.
totally threw me off. I had this memorized. No, so
I restart it?
no, we're good. So just inside the front door of the building, if you walk in, this is looking towards the reception area here. So you can see that, you know, interior window frames. Actually, there's a lot of glass in the building, it's just not in this area. Reception desk is getting put in, finished paint going, so it's really coming along. This is another rendering inside one of the media centers, just to kind of give concept before I go to the next one. I did not beep. It's faulty. So casework and everything going in, as well as the countertops. We have a bunch of baffles. If you see kind of those wires hanging down from the ceiling, can I beep in reverse? So that would hang all those baffles there up above, and then double beep going forward. Perfect. So this is obviously, if you remember Wings Park before, there were very few windows in that whole building. So we have 2 windows that look like this one in there now, and that's also a window seat in the front of that. So there's kind of a multicolored pad that goes in front of that. This is the one facing out to the east to the trail, but the one on the west side by the entrance is the same. One more. Just have finished electrical going in now, so the final lights and everything going on in the corridors. One more forward there. So this is just a flavor. We currently have carpet done in all of the classrooms now. The classrooms are actually in really good shape, almost ready to be cleaned up and shut the door while we finish the rest. It's the parts in the middle that need a little help still. So just a little flavor of some of the fun colors that we have going on over there. You can go ahead and go forward one more. So this is just a typical classroom. So you have the writing surface in there. Every classroom has a sink and similar cabinets to this. You can go forward one more. And on the other wall, those 2, they look black in this picture, but they're actually big pieces of steel. So that's like magnetic posting board. And then in between will be a painted writable surface on that whole area. And then last one, this is just looking back at the typical entry of a classroom. So things are shaping up well over there. We're looking to have, as far as like all of the official building authority sign off, fire marshal and all of that, coming up the end of March timeframe. But we will have kind of some lingering items still within the building. We've had an issue getting lockers, which were ordered a year ago. They're currently slated to be here April 7th, I think is that date for lockers right now. And then we still have some work to do on the site with getting those basketball courts in the back and the playgrounds and sidewalks. So, but overall, shaping up really well. From a budget perspective, things have gone smoothly. We've been able to operate, within those original budgets that we gave. And I know you guys have seen some changes throughout the project, but we've been able, like I said, to stay in the budget that we started with. So overall, I think things are going well. So, do you want to add anything else, Josh?
No. Good job.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Sounds good. Thank you. Item 7, reports. Ms. Herrings.
All right, let me pull mine up. Tomorrow, Austin SB will be bowling in the individual state tournament down at Maple Lane, so super excited to watch him bowl. We presented our Coaches versus Cancer Strike, so almost $1,400 raised between us and Dyke New Hartford, so it was really cool to have both schools come together in order to raise that much money, and this is the first year really getting back into it since COVID and everything, so it's just onward and upward from there. And then you can see the end of the season honors for girls and boys basketball. Milena earned first team all conference honors, and Alexa Berryman earned honorable mention. For boys basketball, Cole Hamilton and Carter Jeans earned second team all conference honors, and Garrett Keel earned an honorable mention. For conference wrestling, unfortunately, we did not have anybody qualify past districts or past sectionals, but we did have 2 of our seniors place very well in conference. Christian Stoller was a conference champ at 285, and Leighton Patterson got 3rd at 138. So really strong showing for our first year in the conference there. And we did end, I'll skip the first bullet point under wrestling, sectionals. They ended their season with 4 third place finishes, so you need to be in the top 2 to move on to districts. So we're super close to cracking that and getting some of our wrestlers on the state. I'm sure all of you have seen the news, or if you haven't, now you know girls wrestling has been sanctioned. So what does this mean for us? We'll continue to pursue a girls only wrestling team. The state has put out some more information about that, and they'll allow 7-12 programs, so that way middle school and high school girls can wrestle together. And it's still being developed, but hopefully in the next month we'll still continue to get more and more information about that. But that's really exciting, and since it is sanctioned, it will just be girls versus girls and boys versus boys. It won't be any mixing anymore at all. For boys basketball, their season is over, but we did have some late season wins over West Central and New Hampton at the varsity level. The New Hampton game was awesome, and it was really nice to have some of that redemption there. In the lower levels, it's really great to see the continual growth that they had throughout the season, so really exciting for what's to come there. And the girls also ended their season with a loss to Benton-Schellsburg, and the JJV team, it was awesome. They had a huge win over Waterloo West, which, they're a 4A school, and here we are coming in. We lost to them by 2 points and had a redemption game where we beat them by 1 point in overtime. It was super cool. And then yesterday, and Mr. Hadley drove bus, so maybe he could speak a little bit more to it. They went down to an Iowa girls game where they played Michigan and got to have some team bonding there. And then they're going to have some team bonding Sunday. Oh, wait, next Sunday. Sorry. My days are all off.
But I will give you some after next Sunday.
Yeah. So, Tim's going to drive bus, and he's going to take the girls down to an Iowa game next Sunday. And then the day after that, they get back-to-back field trips. Wow, I wish I was on the girls' basketball team. Then they're going to go down to the state tournament, but they're going to go is the 7-12 team and have a great team bonding experience. So that'll be really cool. And then bowling, we already mentioned Austin SB qualified for state, so I'll be going down and watching him bowl his heart out, and he has a really good chance at placing as an individual, which would be really cool. And they celebrated 2 more late season wins over Denver and Columbus. And the girls improved every single meet this season, which, that's all you can hope for is that growth as the season progresses. The boys ended with a 3rd place finish at districts and the girls finished 5th, which the boys were projecting more middle of the pack, like 5th place finish, so they really bowled their hearts out, and hopefully next year we'll get some younger blood going again and really increase that. And you have to get 1st place in Class 1A in bowling to make it as a team to state, but we'll see. Hopefully that lit a fire under them to show them what they're capable of. 5th grade band and vocal music had their first concert last week. So that was fun. Mr. Hadley got drafted to narrate the concert. Then short film for speech received 2 Division I's and a Division II for an overall 1 at state speech, which is awesome. And they currently have 12 acts they're working on for individual state, or individual speech, so they're working on that as well. DECA just came back from their trip for the State Leadership Conference, and BPA is still there through tomorrow. So lots going on. And then lots of home events, as you can see. Track starts tomorrow. So we have a little bit of a break here for a while on our home events, and if you were here just before the meeting started, you heard we are a neutral site to host the Jessup and Denver game for the district finals. But other than that, that's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McGinnis.
All right. So on February 17th, so just this past week, our 1st graders got to participate in UNI's virtual African American read-in. I was approached by the grandparent of one of our 1st grade students, and he, told me a bit about kind of what was going on and everything involved. And I was immediately sold, and it didn't take much convincing at all to get the 1st grade team on board too. So just an awesome opportunity for our kids just to get a little bit more cultural diversity. They had guest readers, they had puppet shows, they even got to meet TC and TK. So again, just a great opportunity for our 1st graders, and I'm looking forward to it becoming an annual thing for us at the elementary. We completed our winter fast screening period at the beginning of February. We saw decent growth from our 2nd, 3rd graders on their A reading assessments. So that's more like their reading comprehension and parts of the language side of things. And then our 2nd and 4th graders saw similar growth in their CBMR assessments, which is their fluency assessments, so how quickly they read. Our 3rd graders also made pretty impressive 4% growth in math, which I was really pleased with. And then, but again, I think the most eye-opening thing is that our kindergartners made 11% growth in their early reading assessment, and while making solid gains in math. So big shout out to our kindergarten teachers who are they're working their tails off every day. And then last thing, we've officially started our hiring season this past week with the help of Jamie and Barb Winter. We screened our candidates for our new elementary counselor. We had 7 total applicants. We took a look at 4, and I think we landed on 2 that we want to bring in to get to know a little bit better and get them in front of our whole team. So I think we set those up for next Thursday. So our school board meeting in March, we'll have that person for you guys to approve. Any questions?
Thanks. Ms. Lutzering.
We got our reports back, and our 6th through 12th graders had a 84% completion rate, which I was super excited about because I wanted improvement from last year, which we ended with 79% completion rate. So I think we had 564 courses we were assigned to kids, 84% of them were completed, and with an average grade of a B, so I thought that was pretty good. Gearing up for our family conferences, we're going to try to do it a little different. We had a conference with our parents every week, so we're looking to kind of bring families in and interview and ask questions about what we can continue to do better with, and just kind of see, what went well, what didn't so far this year. 90% of our K-6 students grew in fast testing from fall to winter, so that was pretty exciting too. Next is setting up the task of doing ISASS testing and FAST testing with all of our open enrolled kids and tuition-in kids. We travel across the state to do that. Our biggest trip will be to Diagonal, which will be down by, I think, the Missouri border?
Yes, real close.
So definitely will be interesting to see what that will bring as we travel all over to do that. Definitely didn't have to do that part last year, so this has been a learning curve. We're just continuing to spread the word about open enrollment and getting pre-registration in, just to see kind of what our staff needs to look like for next year. And then just looking to try to grow our elective options for our 6th through 8th grade kids. It works out okay for our high school kids that are here in town that can, dual enroll into the high school and have those opportunities. And our K-5 kids have great opportunity in the music, art, and PE option. We have live PE going on this year, but we're looking to try to get music and art for up to 8th grade next year. So we'll see what that looks like.
Okay, any questions? All right, Mr. Hapley.
Good evening. The high school, we are rolling along. Are you guys just here to observe? Okay, so you guys are probably not access to the agenda, but Ms. Herons is the AD for 512, Mr. McGinnis is elementary, Ms. Lessing is online, which is awesome. Just started that last year, so we're all principals giving a report on the high school principal. Jenny K. Ms. Hampton is not here, but I can tell you in the middle school they had a fabulous Valentine's Day dance because I chaperoned it. And for the love of Pete, there are a few times I want to be at the board meeting more than that night, but that would have been better. Anyway, it was awesome. It was great. Is what I meant.
I would take a board meeting over a dance any
That's what I
day.
meant.
Any day.
A lot of fun. It was fun. It was great.
I take a year of board meetings over a dance. Been there, done that.
It was a lot. I forgot just like how blessed I am at the high school level. I was just like, thank you, Lord. But anyway, I love middle school. It's fun. But thanks. So one of the, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about this later in our course book, and, hopefully approval, but one of the things I asked the ELA department to do back in November was to actually implode the entire department. Here's why. Our ELA numbers have been traditionally not the strongest numbers in our building, and it's time to do something different. So you continue to get the same result if you continue to do the same thing, right? So we are revamping that. I'll explain more about that later. But from November to now, that team has just been working their tails off to literally rebuild block by block our ELA offerings, and we've actually expanded our courses, and I think it's going to be amazing opportunities for students at every level. We kind of created 3 different tiers, and it's just, I'm excited about it. But Ms. Kane, Ms. Rice, and Teresa Tiki also, huge props to them for just creating these incredible opportunities for students. It's really kind of brand new, but it's also like everything education comes back around. I started investigating, and 20 years ago, this is kind of what we were doing. It was a little bit more electives, and somewhere we went just more block by block. So we'll see, but I'm really excited about the opportunity. Told you about our Emt Program. Andy from Mercy One's ambulance team came out. He brought just some swag and engaged with our students during lunchtime. It was awesome. I think we've got 8 to 10 students kind of committed right now, but we're just rolling out next week our actual sit down and sign up for classes, so we'll know more then. We have to have at least 8 between us and the community to offer the course, so if you know a young person, push them into it. It's awesome. It's really a great opportunity. So driving forward from there, we also have been doing a 6-week wellness challenge with our staff. Mrs. Tapper is our wellness coach for our building, and she created basically a matrix of options you could choose. Mine was to drink more water. I'm terrible at it, and I had a monster on the way here. So I'm in progress, but it was really cool to see our staff kind of commit to making a 6-week change of something, especially it was kind of offered after New Year's. So it's kind of like, oh, fell off the wagon, here's another opportunity to get back on. This week we're actually going to start our Raising Student Voices and Participation, led by Student Council, Mr. Kennan and Ms. Fueling. That's also known as RSVP. Essentially what this is, the Student Council will go homeroom to homeroom for the next week and basically generate ideas of things they would like to see improved in our school. So this has been traditionally done and created things like microwaves in our cafeteria for student use, extended passing times, things like that. I really hope they bring up the parking lot so I can be like, you know what, yeah, let's pave it. We're still doing that, right?
Hope so.
Okay, oh, thank you. Okay, good. I'm like, yeah, easy win, great idea, and then I'll present it like it's my idea, and you guys pay for it. I'm really excited. As we continue to drive down, our leadership team, this is not as sexy or as fun as the other stuff I talked about, but it's probably the most important thing up here tonight. Our building leadership team has been working through what we call the school assessment of multi-tiered support implementation process. Mouthful, right? They call it the SAMI for short. We've brought in a consultant, and she's been working with us for the last, 6 months bi-weekly, to actually look at improving social, emotional, behavior, and mental health supports within our building. One of our conditions of learning survey results was that we're kind of lacking in student-to-student relationships. Our teachers are engaging in our students well, but like, how do we get them to work among each other? And then, of course, still being in a pandemic, how do we support those things beyond just the classroom? So really excited to dive into that work, and it's generated a lot of great ideas so far, and we're just kind of going further and further. Also, Ms. Herring's mentioned some opportunities to attend in person. So we've had DECA and BPA going out. We've had some other ones, but most recently, Mr. Dinsdale took a group to Advanced Manufacturing Day. These students got the chance to do a lot of hands-on learning with a lot of different things that maybe we can't always bring huge equipment in to actually look at, but they got to go there and experience that a lot of virtually. And then in May, I've been working with NICC. They're actually going to bring a truck driving virtual simulator. So they bring an actual semi and they sit in it with a virtual screen in it, and then they actually, quote unquote, drive the semi. It's got a real feel look to it. Another huge labor shortage right now, if you've seen the news, truck drivers, massive need. So if we can inspire a couple of students to maybe grab onto that, really excited about that opportunity. And then finally, if you've been in our cafeteria recently, we actually moved the Hall of Fame. It was kind of back on an exterior wall. We moved it closer to a restroom area that students go by every single day. And it's actually kind of cool. We got some other graphics too that we put in our library and our entrance, but we're still kind of continuing that building project, even though they've long forgotten about us and our punch list and things like that. Sorry, that's you right here. It's so weird, but I know you feel beyond it. So we're excited about it. We're still driving forward. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're on the public hearing for the school calendar. So many people here.
I know. I'll pull it up though and just chat about it quick, and then I don't have to chat about it as much when we get down to the action item. So the district leadership team's been working on the school calendar. They've been doing this since December. They go through and really go day by day, week by week, and kind of build out, make sure that we have enough hours. Every year there's a couple little nuances and changes because they spend so much time going through it and pretty systemically, and we have some continuity on our district leadership team. It helps that there's a lot of continuity then on our district calendar. So it pretty much looks the same as last year. A couple different things. A few years ago, we moved kind of our professional learning from the beginning of the year to early in the fall, just because teachers feel overwhelmed coming back to school and getting prepped, and so we feel we get more effect on professional learning if we do it in September or the first part of October. So that change has been kind of made, and that we're continuing, except for this year. We're butting it up to Labor Day to create a 4-day weekend for families, kind of a last hurrah for those that want to celebrate the last weekend of summer. Teachers get to come back and work, but for the families, it's a nice 4-day weekend built in there. Conferences stay at the end of October. Continue with the 3-day weekend, the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off at Thanksgiving. We get positive feedback on that every single year. Winter break goes from the 22nd to the 3rd, so not quite 2 weeks, just shy of that. This is always the greatest debate on how long to make Christmas break every year. MLK Day will be a day off for our kids. Staff will utilize it as professional development. We have some required trainings, and we utilize that day every year to kind of knock those required trainings off our punch list. Today's partner, President's Day, will continue to be a holiday. Conferences in March, and then this is another change. So this year, after our conference exchange day, which is the Friday, we have Monday off. So again, a 4-day weekend. They requested so that we have a 3-day week to take the conference exchange day on the 16th, and then take Friday and Monday off. So that makes a 5-day weekend, or a little bit of a mini spring break. So not fully jumping into the spring break, full week off like many schools do, but just getting a little break built in there. And then Easter is Good Friday off. That's a paid holiday for our staff, and then professional development on the following Monday. All in all, that gets us done on May 25th. So pretty similar to this year and the years past. Okay.
All right, we're on to discussion, board policy 200 series.
So exciting. This is the policies that really impact you guys. So 200 series is talking about school board, sets up the organization of the board. And again, just a reminder that we're just going through these because we're changing our format of how they're accessible, and you can see how nicely this is set up, where each one has got its own link. So something that comes up time to time is board vacancies. So a person can click there using the table of contents and just easily go to that policy without having to read and go through a PDF of a whole bunch of pages. So, and going through here, we didn't see anything that necessarily negated pretty significant change. So unless there's something you guys want to dig into here or look into. I think we've updated these in the last few years. Annual meeting got moved. This should be, that's right, it changed. So it just has to happen after the 31st of August. So we do ours in like November, December now because of the election. Okay, move on.
All right, now we're on to the reestimate for the review of budget.
Okay, exciting times this time of year. So we have, this is a pretty similar document to what you saw last year. Just kind of,
These are in the back of your packet, by the way.
just kind of as a reset of how we ended 21, what we thought last year at this time, how 22 was going to look, and then how we re-estimate it. So the general fund, big takeaway there is we're actually projecting a re-estimated net position of being up in that fund, so about 600,000. So that's positive. Management, I've called this out a few times throughout the year that we've been running a negative balance. But as you can see here on the projection for the re-estimate, the reason we've been running a negative balance is because those expenses so far outweigh the revenues. But at the end of the day, our fund balance is projected to end at 71,000. So it's going to be positive. It's a little more expensive because we had the storm hit. We took 5,000 out for our deductible there. We bought a vehicle or two, and that was additional vehicle insurance. And then that was pretty much it. I think just that and that hardening market for our property and casualty insurance has not been helpful. And then save. There's not a whole lot to discuss here. That's where we pay our bond payments out of. So when you look at those expenses of 1.76, remember 949 of that is the bond payment that goes to debt service, and then debt service pays the bond. So, the bond, speaking of which, I've got that calculated to spend out by June 30th of 22. That's worst case scenario, basically. So if we don't have it spent out by June 30th, it doesn't hurt us, but if we did spend it out and I didn't have it budgeted that we spent it out, then it looks bad. So we've got it budgeted to spend out. Pepple, I have a star next to that one because if you look at that at first blush, it's like, what the heck happened? So we had 34,000 budgeted in revenues and 296 budgeted in expenses. We came in at 2.5 and 2.8. That's where all the money for the storm damage went. So when we got the money from EMC, it went into the revenue side, and when we paid out the different companies for the fixes, it went out of the expense side. Also, when we use some of our CARES money to pay for construction costs, it gets funneled through Pepple as well. So that's why that number bloated. I put a star next to it to call that out. Debt service is an in-out account. There's not really much to talk about there. That's principal and interest obligation for FY22. Nutrition is probably my biggest wild card. It generally is my biggest wild card just because, first of all, we don't know what the feds and the state are going to do in terms of reimbursements. By the time June 30th is kind of what we're told is what we have for sure, and then it's a question mark July 1 and beyond. So I'm hoping to get some more details from Haley on that, from our nutrition director on that, and get those numbers sharpened up for March when we present the 23 budget. And again, these are preliminary at this point, but we feel pretty good about these re-estimate numbers and figures. You might see a few changes when we bring in 23, just based on the fact that we're going to be meeting with the negotiation teams here in the coming weeks. So that'll help us kind of sharpen the numbers in terms of what we're thinking personnel expenses. As you know, that's 85% of our budget. So that obviously impacts these numbers quite a bit. Preschool, so I have 2 stars next to that. That is because this is a new fund for us. So basically the state said you're charging fees for offering all-day preschool. The part of preschool that you're charging the fees for has to be basically segregated into this account. So the expenses are basically our personnel expenses and some of the supplies that go into that all-day preschool, and then the revenue is basically just to offset that expense. Construction, it's we'll see where we're at in terms of progress on the flip house. That's the current project on the docket in terms of getting that on the market and sold. As you can see, we don't have it budgeted that it's going to sell by June 30th. So that's where we're at there. And then that's the overall summation of all the different funds. When you add up all the revenues and expenses and fund positions, that's where we're at. So as you can see, it goes from 15 to 5. That's the bond spend. So for the most part. So questions, concerns?
So we ended up getting $2 million more in revenues than what we had projected. Is that one-time money?
For the
General fund?
General fund? Yeah, mostly. That's probably mostly CARES money coming in there. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, when we built the budget, I think we we didn't know how fast we would spend it out, and so we set it up in terms of if you're going to spend out certain amounts in the fiscal year. With some of those capital projects, we burned through some proportionally more this year than we will the year prior and the year we have left. Next year, we're going to be pretty tight just because we know what we have left. Pretty much everything we have left will be labor and we can predict it and budget for it all the way through June 30th is when it has to be spent down anyway. So that, I don't know, I think it's been really nice to have, but it's going to come to an end, and I think next fiscal year those fluctuations should start to stabilize as we get in towards fiscal year 24. It's weird to say.
You can see too, Bob, I mean, there's almost $1 million more in expenses too. And a lot of that gets, the extra $2 million gets funneled over to Pebble, like I was saying, all of it comes into general fund, and then we do transfers, and that's when you guys approve the transfers to those different funds. So, but it all hits in that revenue, so.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that everybody understands, if I understand it correctly, don't be looking at that number for a solvency rate
Right.
going forward for the next year.
Right.
That's gonna be something we're gonna be sitting around,
Right.
having that number.
Yeah, we have, some work to do in front of us over the next 2 years to stabilize and then to figure out what those solvency ratios are going to look like coming out of all this cash and infused life and the changes of staffing and all that stuff has to. I think we have a pretty decent handle on it, but we just got to sit down and really sharpen our pencil on how it all stacks up for the next 2 years so that we come out of it, in a net better position than we went into it. I'm gonna kind of jump on the next part of this after. So we will have to republish our FY22 budget. Statutorily, what we're required to is, I think if there's 10% difference in what we published originally, you have to republish anyway. Michael and I have been in the habit since Michael started to just plan on republishing every year anyway. It's a healthy exercise for us to go through. It wasn't always the case before Michael got here, but just as he started, we just say, let's just do this every year and plan on it, and then it becomes habit. And then, and it makes sense because things happen, tornadoes happen, pandemics happen. So it causes fluctuations in those budget numbers than what we originally planned. Moving along though, the rest of those, these are gonna be a little harder to see. It might be impossible to see on this screen. Maybe I can zoom in. So haven't decided if we like it yet or not. So in the past, the Department of Management sent us a spreadsheet of putting together our budget and what we have to publish, how we generate tax rate and all those kind of things. This year it's on a website and everything updates and you got to click back and forth between different things. But this is our inputs page. And so this page is primarily where we get to make decisions. And again, some of it is drawn in here for us. So the aid and levy inputs are at 2.5% increase. That's what's allowable by the state. That was passed and signed by the governor last week. So that's locked in. And then our SBRC modified supplemental amount, dropout prevention, is locked in. You guys passed that December. December. We had to submit it by January, so that's locked in. No audit changes for preschool. There was an audit change up here on our certified count. We had a nuance that happened the auditor found, and so we get credit for that. It's a year behind. So instructional support levy, that's based on our maximum proportion that's voted on by the voters, 7%, and that's an input. So we can decrease that depending on what we'd want to do. We have it maximized there, and then nothing for educational improvement. So this is down here is where we really get into decision making and ultimately how it impacts local property tax base. So cash reserve levy, which we have to ask permission from the SBRC. We do throw through our published budget. We have the maximum allowable that we can ask for in terms of cash reserve. It comes directly from property taxpayers. is $1.4 million. We have hovered anywhere from 600 to 800,000. I think we maybe have touched $1 million in the past, but right now we are proposing $775,000 as part of that cash reserve levy. And then PEPL, we're not maximizing because it all generates from the same place. And so we kind of got to play this game of which silo do you fill up, because interest rates are low because of our bond payment, because of the things we've done with the construction loan, and all that stuff. We have the capacity to lower our PEPL rate currently. And this is the one where we would maybe anticipate a little bit of discussion, is where do we feel comfortable? So in the past few years, we had, I shouldn't say 3 or 4 years ago, we had pretty large carryovers in our management fund. And again, that's a fund that's paid for directly by local property tax owners. And so the idea is, well, we don't need to be a bank for property tax funds. And so we wanted to continue to lower our carryover year over year in our management fund. And management can be used to pay our property and casualty insurance. It can be used to pay early retirement benefits, and it's used to pay our insurance on our automobiles and buses, and then it's used to pay our deductible in any event that we need a deductible. So if we're sued, you can pay your deductible. If we have a tornado, you can pay your deductible. So all those things can be paid for out of management funds. So it's not a large list, but the funds do come directly from property taxpayers. So we have, the last few years, we've levied around 300,000, but annually we spend between 400,000 and 500,000. Is that accurate?
Yeah, probably.
So our insurance is almost 400,000, and then you have our revolving early retirement insurance that we pay for those that have retired years ago, and then we have the reserve that we want to keep for the deductibles and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, bottom line, this is an area where we could afford to go as low as 500,000. So the question that we have in a discussion that we should probably have is how much do we want to have in carryover year over year? And like Michael showed me several times this year, we're in the red most of the year because we pay our premium out and we don't have a carryover because we have burned that account down on purpose. Now we got to the point where we don't have a large carryover, which we're comfortable with. We want to make sure you're comfortable with that. And so it's just a conversation of how much do you want to have in reserve for that kind of rainy day stuff? Do we want to, and then if you have other goals, if we think that in 2 or 3 years we're going to want to offer an early retirement again, you want to have that built up a little bit to maybe take on some of that risk of having to bring on new early retirees. Maybe before you answer, let me just go through the rest of these. I'll close this one for now. I think it's this one. Yep. All right, so this one's really hard to see. Okay, so this is what is generated by all those numbers that we put in on that Levy worksheet, or those inputs. So it actually tells us exactly what's generated in those property tax funds, and then how much we get year over year. You'll notice this is the biggest number. So our enrollment went up, and our state aid went up by 2.5%. So you can see we went from 10.06 million to 10.7. So we have $600,000 of new cash that the district's getting this year over last year, driven by those two things: increase in student enrollment and increase in the state aid.
property value go up?
Property values did go up, that's down here. Not significantly, but it did go up. I think that's down here. There's a difference, shows a year over year. Man, that might be on another sheet, Bob.
It did go up, because that'll attribute for part of that too.
Yes, it will. I saw that. Maybe on the next sheet.
Is it right here, property tax adjustment, middle?
No, that's that
something
rollback
different.
that the state
I just
does.
was looking for property. Regular program property tax?
No, he's talking about the evaluation.
Oh,
We went from $300 million valuation to 330 something million. That seem right?
Maybe a 10% increase.
All right, this one you can get lost in this one. This is the one that you should be most concerned about. So it's the last page in your packet there. Sorry, you keep your readers on.
Not use readers, but I might need to.
So again, you can see it by this. This gets into more categoricals. So you have dropout preventions in there. AEA flow through goes in there, and then you can see year over year what's 22 compared to 23. And on the right hand side there, you can see the difference, what increases, what decreases. But the most important number is down at the bottom, and we would be proposing with the numbers we have in right now, if we were to publish it today. So last year we published almost $14 for the tax rate, but then it got decreased. Forget what decreased it, Michael. Remember that? It came through.
Yeah, I thought we published 1390 and it went 1390,184 because there's always some finalization that takes place after we.
It was
after we send it to the
1394.
county.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So.
And so if the numbers live right where they are, we can lower taxes to 13.82, which is a good thing. That would offset the tax increase that the city's proposing, at least for those Oline residents. Would more than capture that. So net taxes should go down depending on what happens with the county. Now, if you would say we are comfortable with a lower management fund and go to 600,000 or 550 or all the way down to 500, if we could do that, and the tax rate would drop probably to 13.7 or even maybe 13.6 and something. Or you could drop that and increase cash. So you could put more in the cash reserve levy, or you could put a little bit more into PEPL to generate more funds there. We're happy with where the cash reserve is at, because we're slowly increasing our cash position. We don't need to do it all at once. We think it's healthy. Like I said, the ESSER funds have helped us in some certain areas, and we're going to continue to, benefit from that over the next 2 years, hopefully, and then we can relook at it and readjust as necessary. So I'll stop talking and listen if there's any questions. For our newbies, this is probably super overwhelming.
So on PEPL surtax, where are we at as far as maximizing that? Well,
So we're about halfway for what we're doing on our PEPL surtax.
so we could take that up a little.
That one could go up.
Because I'll just be honest, what I'm concerned about is they're gonna lower income tax for people that don't pay income tax. And we're gonna, not by maybe our rate, but by the fact that the property values go up, we're gonna actually raise what we have to take away from people that can't afford to pay. People in lower income that are not gonna see any advantage or fixed income, any advantage to a lowering of income tax are gonna see their actual right to check for more property tax because the valuation is going up. So I would like to make sure we have this at a place that would make me offset. See what I'm saying?
I follow you. One of our concerns, even just talking about, you know, that when we're talking about the income surtax is, you know, what impacts will what will happen if the governor's income tax changes? I mean, how is that all gonna play into this anyway, in terms of the percent that we can ask for off of that?
If we get 7% of 8%, and now we're gonna get 7% of
4%?
4%.
Good question.
If we get 7% of 4%, then we're gonna have to go ahead and raise our levy.
Correct. Our cash reserve levy.
Yes.
And raise.
Through property tax.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And then the people that are on fixed income and the lower income brackets, it's gonna hit them harder.
Correct.
So will that take effect? That won't take effect in this budget till that.
No, and that proposal will not be fully implemented until like 2025.
Before they get to 4.
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, is your concern underfunding PEPL with this FY23 budget, and then what happens in FY24 if income tax goes to 4%? Or
Well, that's one of my concerns. Another concern is with property values going up, which they have been, and we've been doing very diligently trying to hold our rate pretty flat.
Right.
But as property values go up, there are people that are on fixed and low income that, the fact of the matter is, we're asking for more money from them.
right,
And they're the people that can least afford. So that's why I'm wondering if we could add to the income surtax on the PEPL and maybe just lower the rate,
okay.
or leave the rate the same and change the mix. Maybe it doesn't amount to enough to where it's significant.
It could, you can change tenths pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Start to mess with some of these numbers. So.
I mean, I'm not saying that what we need in our from PEPL needs to change, it's just where we get the money from.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I'm with you. We can look at that balance of what that looks like.
I think we're at the ceiling on the income surtax, the 7% one.
We're looking at the voted income
Yeah.
surtax rate on
Right.
the PEPL side.
Right.
Shifting over to the management fund, how are we as far as, how close are we to having people that retired early, where they're hitting their age to where we're not even getting their insurance anymore?
Yeah, I think that we'll have we have a couple that should be close to coming off, but there's a bubble in like 2 or 3 years that will like, so like maybe it's 3, there'll be like 4 or 5 that come off. That seem right?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up right now to be able to back what you're saying, but, yeah. Yeah, we, in terms of what kind of an obligation we have there, it's about 102 this coming year. So the FY22 to FY23, it's about 102,200, and then another 25 on top of that. So you're looking at about 127,000 in obligations this coming year for those retirees. Nobody falls off that year, but then the following year, FY24, we've got one that we only pay for 1 month, and another that we pay for 10 or 11 months. Yeah, 9 months, sorry, 9 months. So 2 come off the rolls that year. And that drops the obligation to about 54,000. So, I mean, we cut it in about half in 24, but that's assuming we don't add any more to the rolls, but yeah, yep, so. And then, FY 25 goes down to 42, 26 goes down to 32, and then in 27, that's the last year that we have obligations of the current ones that are on rolls, and it's $6,600 that year. And then, yep, so.
So, are you satisfied with where management's at, or do you want to see a lower? We could afford to lower the rate a little bit more, or could afford to maybe leave the rate where it's at, but we could lower management and raise cash, or play with PEPL and see how that comes together. Our fear, this is, we talked about, we could afford to lower taxes. I mean, we could afford to levy less. But the unknown with the tax rate is it really has us in a bad position, because it's going to be it's awful sour pill to swallow if we go to, say, 13.5 or 13.6, and maybe we can do it for 2 years, and then everything, the income surtax stuff all changes, and now all of a sudden we got to say, well, we got to come back and say we need 14 or we need 14.5. That sucks.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, most of what we get told at conferences is the best case is trying to keep it steady, but like you said, Bob, I mean, I'm not arguing. I know when property valuations go up, it means more money, even though the rate stays flat. So I get that, but there's also a concern of, we drop it to what Josh was saying. In 2 years, we talk about 14.5 instead of we kept it at 13.9.
Well, from my opinion, if we come up with the revenue at 13.82, so as long as we get that revenue number, and if we could try to change where we get some of those PEPL funds, that would be something that I don't like taking that management fund down to where it's going to be a problem.
okay. So you'd be satisfied kind of with what we're proposing?
I would.
Okay.
If that's the total amount of dollars coming in, you understand where I'm taking it from.
Yep. And I think I know there's probably a little wiggle room there, so we'll start with that PEPL. We'll play around with the PEPL numbers and then see what that does to the rate and how that plays out. And then if we need to use, pull 25,000 out of management or 25,000 out of cash reserve to kind of just put a little salt on everything to make it work. I think we have flexibility built in at this point to do that. Okay, any other thoughts or feelings? Okay, we'll start kind of getting our numbers sharp and start the process of working towards publishing a budget and get ready to do the public hearing and the approval and all that kind of fun stuff in March.
Alright, now we are moving on to consent agenda items.
Just point of note real quick, I did add 2 things today. It was a holiday, so we were a little behind the 8 ball, but we did, I offered a buildings grounds position to Jim Prouty. He's accepted, so I added that to the personnel. And then we had a request for a leave of absence till the end of the school year from a teacher. So I've added that to the personnel as well. That happens this afternoon. So.
Just need a motion or any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I'll second.
Erin made the motion, and Erica seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same, motion passes. Item 11 is to approve the school calendar, which we just discussed, so.
Yep, no, I won't spend any more time on it, so.
I move to approve the 22-23 school calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Bob made the motion and Joni seconded to approve the calendar as presented. Discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same, motion passes. Item B is to approve the FFA request to Wisconsin.
FFA would like to take their annual officer retreat to Black Forest.
Black River.
Black River, yep. Something naturey. This June. So that's it.
Recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the FFA request to travel to Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Aaron made the motion
I'll
and
second.
Joni seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same, motion passes. C is to approve the high school course and executive summary.
You're on, Mr. Hadley.
You want me to go line by line or just
No, I think probably, maybe,
few highlights? I
Yep.
mean, the ag one's pretty nice softball. They're just adding ag leadership and communication. Obviously, one of our goals in the high school is to improve communication among students. Something that we actually have required, we'll talk about in our ELA as well. Band, I'm really excited about this one. Mr. McBride was asked to do Husky Productions as a class. So currently he's been offering this. I don't know if you're aware, but we have this mobile DJ service. They also do a lot of other tech work with the Williams Center. I'll tell you who's probably most excited about this is Dick and Doug over at Williams Center, because they actually hire young people at $20 an hour from Owine High School to run all of their events, and this is huge. So this is going to allow them, we're going to do it during homeroom so they can take it multiple years, kind of like annual. It also doesn't interfere with Mr. McBride's practice schedules for individual lessons as well as class. So again, easy win for our district, and something we're already doing. We haven't been giving students credit for this. They do get the opportunity to work, but I think it's a little bit more teeth, give them that overview and that continue to build that crew, and super exciting. The business, kind of a similar idea. Our media production team has really taken off, and this is a huge need again in the society that we live in. Some of you probably watched the Husky newscast that's produced by our media productions team. So currently we kind of have one level of digital media production. So these students come in, they learn production, and then they kind of move on and they do something else, which is great, but it always kind of leaves this like new group, right? So if they could continue to do it time after time and receive credit for doing the course over and over, they could really build something, and we're really excited about the opportunity. So they still have to take intro as a prereq, but then they could take digital media production, really, 8 semesters worth if it fit with where they go. And they're starting to do other things. Some of you might listen to the All Bite podcast that Cole and Brennan do. Lots of fun, lots of energy, and also the great thing about our school. That's come out of this class as well. So just offering it more than once, one and done kind of thing, but continue to build that program. So it doesn't take away from any of our other offerings as well that Mr. Thomas is currently doing. The big rock, as I mentioned before, is English. So essentially what we did, and why I said implode, so before it was English 9, English 10, English 11, English 12. You could take some other courses. There were 2 other electives that we allowed from that, but it was very rote. We had some honor courses in there, but the problem is it didn't really play, down to student, down is the wrong word, but maybe didn't play to remedial for those students who came in without the skills. It was just everybody takes English 9, everybody takes English 10. There was nowhere to go. If you didn't get English 9, you just did English 9 a third time, right? So it just, there's got to be something different here. So what we did was, we are going to start everybody on the same track. Everybody starts with English Essentials as a freshman. And so from there, kind of based on how they do with that class, they're either then put in English Essentials 2, which is more of a remedial skill building, or they can take Introduction to Communications or Introduction to Writing, which kind of puts them on a college level track, more of an honors one, or they can begin to open up to Applied Communications, which we're going to require for every student at some point to be part of that. From there, they can kind of work through other pathways, depending on where they need to go. At the end of all this, when they choose their electives, you still have to have 8 semesters or 4 years of ELA. That's still required. That's a state requirement. That's still our requirement as well. But at the end, you capstone with one of these courses that Mr. Ains is displaying here. It could be, instead of English 12, you take Workplace Prep English. So you can read the description, but essentially, if I'm a student who maybe isn't college bound, which is fine, like we need tradespeople in our midst right now. So I don't necessarily need to read Shakespeare, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I do need to learn how to read a technical manual. That's where this is going to be put into place. I do need to know how to get up and give a workplace presentation. That's going to be part of Workplace Prep English. So it's going to be geared towards students whose pathway maybe is straight into the workforce or a technical or trade skill, which is awesome. We also continue to offer a college prep English, which prepares students to take NICC courses, which we already will continue to offer concurrently as well. Or they can simply take senior English, which is somewhere in between, something that we're kind of already doing. We kind of just revamped it as English 12. Maybe they're not sure if they're completely college bound, they're not quite sure they're going to go in the workplace. It kind of gives them a landing place. So they can take one of those 3 capstones through there, either the college pathway, kind of in between, or I'm going to go technical and career route. So again, I'm super excited about what this means, because it allows us to differentiate up and down rather than just rubber stamping and cookie cutting our students, because they're not. They all come from different places through there. So you can kind of look through more. If you have questions, I'd love to field that. It's been much bigger work than I thought it would be. I'll be completely honest. We had to match course codes and we had to do all this stuff, but I'm really excited. And our ELA team is super on board. I thought they'd be resistant and told Mr. Ain I was going in and might not come back out from one of our meetings. And after a long discussion, they kind of flipped somewhere halfway between, and they got the energy, and they've really built this thing. So awesome. Healthcare compliance is the prereq to emergency medical technician course that we're going to offer next spring. So that is only the emergency medical technician course is only a spring course offered through NICC. However, we built our own healthcare compliance course before that this fall to get students started. What we want is for students to go through and be honest about what the EMS course is going to be, because it's a heavy build. It's a lot of science, but also there's potentially some, not traumatic, but maybe intense medical situations that you're going to be in. The healthcare compliance course is going to allow them to do that. But then if they're like, you know what, maybe EMT isn't quite for me, but I really enjoyed this part of the medical, it still gets them down that road. So they'll be CPR certified through it. They're going to go through HIPAA. They're going to go through all these different things that healthcare compliance does right now. They'll get a credit for that, and they'll get 3 credits for OHS, for EMT, but also they'll get a college credit through NICC for the fall, and then actually 8 college credits in the spring. So they're going to end up with 9 credits if you go through this EMT course in 1 year. It's a full, really kind of academic load for a college student, and it's all free and paid for, and they get a certificate at the end. So again, super excited about all this. You can see all the prereqs. I mean, those prereqs that you see in EMT are things we're going to do in the fall. So, getting that TB test, that physical. We don't want any barriers to entry, because there's a lot of hours required to do this. They still have to do ambulance rides out of school time. They have to do other clinical hours. I mean, it's a very robust program. We're not watering this down. It's the same thing that any EMT person gets certified for. We're just doing a lot of the heavy lifting. We're stretching what normally is done in like a 6-month course into a year, so that we can ensure that our students are prepared and going to pass. And if I go down, I really want them to actually know what's going on. It's really about me, it's not about the students. Questions?
Looks great.
Thank you.
Motion, or I shouldn't say, I can't motion, I can recommend. Recommend approval of the 2022-23 OHS course handbook.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-23. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong thing. I'll make a motion to approve the high school course book as presented.
Aaron made the motion and Erica seconded to approve the the course as presented. Discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. D is to approve the OWINE online course book.
So, this was not existent last year, so this is all new. Kind of some highlights. Under the graduation requirements, I adjusted our courses that line up. So like the high school has cell biology and ecology, we have biology A, biology B, just 2 different semesters. So same equivalent, just different names. So I changed that. And then I listed all of the dual enrollment options. So if we have kids that are online that want to take some, like a choir course in person or band or wood tech or anything else, they have the rights to do that. So we have those courses in there also. And then we just have a huge amount of electives. We are lucky that we also have access to teachers from Edgenuity that are certified to teach some of those courses. So it really allows those kids to find a passion area and try it out. And some of the kids think that this course sounds awesome, and they get into it for like 3 days, 4 days, and they're not interested in it anymore. And so we give them another look. So, yeah, but just all of it's pretty.
Is there anything you want me to show, Jacqueline?
No,
Okay.
just
Yeah, props to Jacqueline for getting this one ready too. It's as a former elementary teacher who's sometimes trying to figure out life in the high school world. I have to do what?
I worked on it with my huge team that I have.
Recommend approval of the O2 course book.
I move we approve the O1 and online O2 course book as presented.
Bob made the motion, Aaron seconded to approve the online coursebook as presented. Discussion. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. E is the graduation requirement updates.
Okay, so it requires a separate motion, but this is kind of what Mr. Hadley talked about with the implosion of the English department. We have to resequence how we award credit at the high school. This will also impact O2 as well as O2 will have to sink in because this becomes board policy. So this gets put in the 500 series. I think it's either 500 or 600, but there is a page on graduation requirements in our board policies. So this will be updated there. So basically, the major impact here is the English section. The English Essentials 1, that first semester is required for graduation. And then we're requiring applied communications or public speaking. So we have not in the past required any kind of talking as a graduation requirement. And through a lot of sitting through senior seminar projects and watching kids do things, it's something that we need to teach explicitly. And then writing has been a standalone requirement for us before, and it continues. So those 3 are required, and then they have to get the rest of the other 5 on their own, but they have to fall within the courses that we offer. So that's what allowed that freedom for students gives them some choice, and depending on their path, hopefully students are trying a little bit harder if they're in a class that they've selected for their own pathway that's going to impact them. By the time kids are juniors and seniors anyway, they're not really checked out, but they're definitely thinking about what's next. And we've made these shifts in science, social studies, math in the past few years, and so now it's English's turn to kind of get realigned to what we're trying to accomplish. So recommend approval on the new graduation requirements.
I'll make a motion to approve the graduation requirement updates as presented. I'll second.
Erica made the motion and Aaron seconded to approve the requirements as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. F is the first reading of board policy 100 series.
So we discussed this last month. There were no recommendations for changes, so recommend that we approve this as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of board policy 100 series.
Second that.
Aaron made the motion, Bob seconded to approve the first reading of the 100 series. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, the same. Motion passes. Reports, Michael.
All right, short report, 23 budget is top of the list this month. I'll bring the 23 budget for next month for review and approval. I'll get that up to the county in April. I was able to go to ISFLIC, financial training for the special ed billing and best practices. So that was good. Got some good ideas from that. And we have spring conference for IASBO, the regional or the statewide SBOs will be meeting in March. So that's it for me.
You're on.
All right. Been working on updated. We have 5-year requirement to redo our special ed delivery plan. Those committees have met and finalized. There's a few changes that we were submitting. It is open currently for public comment. It's on our school website. There'll be some Facebook posts coming out requesting comment for that. It's been to the AEA for their review, and then it'll be coming back to you guys hopefully in March for approval. Only the significant changes are how we score roster sizes for special ed teachers. Not a ton of cool stuff happening in Des Moines. I went down earlier in the month to ISB Day on the Hill, and it was chaos because everybody was in subcommittees that day, and then there was a bunch of people sick, and so their presentations were just completely blown up. But it was a good day to get down there and advocate. We were 50-50 on our representation down there, but I got to talk to some of the other leaders in some of the other places, and also got to bend the ear of some lobbyists as well while I was there. Like I said, not a lot of cool stuff really happening. Chet Ingles did put down a bill to try to get some relief on the modified allowable growth, to move the cap that we're currently set at. That creates some inequities amongst districts. It might take a couple years to get that one done, but I think there's traction to do that. And the other one that they're talking about is the governor's big bill. It's got 4 or 5 different things in it. They're all inconsequential, really, and there's a lot of other things happening in the peripherals. But it's all talk right now about, they're calling it a grant, but it's school vouchers, it's school savings accounts, that kind of thing. So that's what's out there. I'd say if there's any good news about what's being proposed, is that at least on the surface, it wouldn't really impact us all that much. There is a provision in the bill that says if there's any money left over that in this pool of money for vouchers, that if you are a school district under 500 total enrollment and you are a plus open enrollee district, so some of our neighbors may fall into that category, they can receive up to like $2,000 per enrollee, but that money will burn down really fast if they spread it around. But the idea is that they're trying to incentivize at that level smaller school districts competing with districts like us. But that's our reality now. It doesn't change anything. We're just putting more money on the table. I think the fear that's generally out there in the public, at least in the school side, public school side, is just that it's a really small foot in the door. But what happens next year and the year after and the year after? Once the bill's on the table, then it's, we're going to put $5 million into this, and then next year it's $10 million, and then it's $20 million, and then it's $50 million. And so it's not great for public education. So that's kind of the concern, and we'll see what kind of comes of it. Michael and I will go on Thursday to our NESIT board meeting to get our insurance conversation, what that looks like. Wellmark is proposing a 4.89% increase. Our trust of 10 districts, we have a little bit of money in the bank, and so our proposal and push is just going to be that we need to buy down that rate a little bit, and I think there'll be appetite for that. It's just a matter of do you do the whole thing or part of it, and what those things, how they fluctuate. And then lastly, met with superintendents from Senator Fredericksburg and Tripola. Soccer feels like it's a go, but we agreed that trying to rush it through this year was going to be a challenge, just to get equipment, find coaches, and get a schedule. So we're looking at potentially having that proposal wrapped up by March, so that we can approve it and then look at starting a shared soccer program in the spring of 2023.
Any questions? All right, discussion. Erica. Joni. All right, upcoming meetings, looks like negotiations.
We'll start on Wednesday here.
All right, just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Aaron made motion, Joni seconded.
I was second.
All, any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same, which passes. 8:21. Don't go away, board. This time I'm prepared.